Stop talking about comic books or I'll kill you. I don't care if the Hulk could defeat the Man of Steel.
Hey there, comic fans. How you doing this morning? Bullseye Bob here, and welcome to Everything Comics. Of course, this is another episode of Having Comics with My Coffee, so thank you for joining me. This is the show where we get together, hang out at a local coffee shop, drink some good coffee. We talk about our comics that we picked up this week. The comics that we picked up this week on January 15th, Wednesday, January 15th. We talking about what I picked up on my pull list and do some semi-spoilery reviews and just kind of hang out and talk comics. As you can hear my voice, I sound a little bit different this morning. I was pretty sick this week and I'm just recovering from that. I felt good enough to come down and film this morning. And you know me, I can't stay away from you guys. So I figured I'd come down and film an episode. So thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are the ones that make this show what it is, and I really appreciate you. And so just go ahead and got a couple of announcements before we actually get into our comic book reviews this morning. First announcement is last week I told you guys that I was going to be starting a new show. Well, that's not going to happen. I got some news this week that we were doing some reshuffling at work, and with my schedule constrained as it is, I didn't think it wise for me to go ahead and start a new venture when I'm kind of in flux with all these changes at work. Our workload's shifted and I got a lot more on my plate, and so just in case, we're not going to start that show. I'm kind of bummed about it. Really wanted to. It was going to be a countdown to the Washington State SummerCon, kind of counting down the days until we get there and giving announcements on all the different people who are going to be there, all the different comic creators that are going to be there, and just to build up some general excitement about the event, because I am really excited about it. So I'm really bummed. I'm not going to be able to do that show. Maybe I'll be able to do it next year, but it's just not in the cards this year. You guys know that my schedule is pretty full as it is. Not only do I work a full-time job during the daytime, after hours I'm also a pastor, and then I have this wonderful comic book hobby, and then I also have to maintain a home life. And so anyway, just when you have too much, you've got to be able to be wise enough to give up something, and it just so happens that I have to give up that. So there you go, folks. No new venture going forward. I do have a couple of things planned. I told you guys some new shows planned that are a lot easier than what I was going to be doing with the countdown to Washington State SummerCon. So stay tuned for those. I will be doing a show with my wife. That'll be really easy to do. Not a lot of editing, not a lot of time having to put into it. And so, but I'll roll that out soon. So anyway, there you go, folks. No new show. And second, like I've told you before, I am on another show on the Comics with Bueller channel. My buddy Bueller, him and I get together, and he has a show called The New Coffee and Comic Show, and that's that drops every Monday morning, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's where we get together. We have some great coffee. We talk about comics, and we have a roundtable discussion that is basically driven by people's comments. He has a weekly preview video. It is the most watched preview video on the internet. And on that video, he will pose a question that him and I are going to talk about this week. Last week's question was awesome. It was, do you think the comic book industry is headed for a crash? A lot of people responded on that. We had a great discussion on it. It's already there on his channel. Check that one out. We had, I think, more views on that discussion than we've had on any of the other shows. And people were really passionate about that subject. You don't want to miss this week's question. And this week's question is, what do you consider a true first appearance? You have a lot of these first appearances that are considered keys. And then you have these cameos, which are like the predecessor to those books, like Amazing Spider-Man number 300. You got that little tick of venom at the end of 299. That's a cameo. And then you have the first full appearance, which is ASM 300. And there are some people who think that that little cameo is the first appearance. What do you guys think? Hop on over to Comics with Bueller. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think about it. And we're going to be discussing that this Monday, 5 a.m. Pacific time. You don't want to miss that show. It is pretty awesome. And so that's it, folks. Those are my announcements for this morning. I'm going to go right ahead and get into our comic books this week. And of course, these are the comics that were picked up on Wednesday, January 15th. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that we are here, live and in living color, from the Refuge Coffee House, which is at 9217 Southeast Foster Road here in Portland. As you know, Portland has a great comic book community. We also have a plethora of great coffee houses, and this is one of them. It's owned by some personal friends of mine, and they're good enough to allow me to come in here and film on Saturday mornings. And so check it out. If you're ever here in Portland, let me know. I'd love to meet you. I'll come down. We'll have a cup of coffee together. We'll talk comics or whatever you want to talk about. But I love hanging out, guys. So just come on down. Refuge Coffee House, 9217 Southeast Foster Road here in Portland. You don't want to miss out on this one. All right, here we go. This is our comic books for the week, and number one this week that I read was The Red Mother, number 2. This, of course, is by Boom Studios, written by Jerry Hahn and art by Danny Luckert. And you guys know this particular book last week I really liked. Not last week, but last month. I really liked it. I think it was my pick of the week. Bueller and I did a pretty in-depth review on it on his channel. You can check that out. But here we are, number 2. I was really excited about this one coming out, and I got to tell you, it didn't disappoint. The writing by Jeremy Hahn is really masterful, really well done, and the artwork sets the tone perfectly inside of the book, so it really is a good read, well written. Anyway, in this one, I would say this book is divided up into 3 different parts. And it has to do with the main character's psychological state. So the first would be her psychological reality, the things that you're seeing. There's a bedroom scene where her boyfriend, who they can't find, it looks like his spirit shows up. It's kind of a ghost element, and so she's trying to deal with the craziness of that. And then she keeps getting visits by the Red Mother. At weird times, sometimes inside of a doctor's office, sometimes she's on the subway, and she knows it's going to happen because everything will go red, and then you can see the Red Mother coming at her. And so she has to deal with the reality that these things are going on psychologically. And then she's seeking help psychologically. She's got, people in her life that, she's, staying in contact with, like her boyfriend's, I think it's her brother. And then she's also going to a shrink. There's a whole scene where she's basically in talking to a psychologist. And then the last is her fight to stay psychologically sane. With all these different things going on, she's trying to figure out, what this all means, how she's supposed to react to it, what she's supposed to do with it. And at certain points, when the Red Mother comes, she fights and tries to take a stand. And so psychologically, she's trying to figure all this out. Anyway, with all that going on, it's masterfully written. It's very well laid out. It's a lot of fun to read. And so I give this one 2 sticks up. If you're not reading this one, you should definitely check it out. All right, folks. Need a drink of coffee because I'm still trying to wake up this morning. I'm drinking an Americano this morning with some sugar-free vanilla sweetener. I'm still on my weight loss. I've lost a total of 57 pounds. It's kind of leveled out a little bit, but that's okay. But yeah, I've lost a total of 57 pounds. Of course, my goal is 100, and I'm getting there slowly but surely, folks. But I'm really pleased about where I'm at, and I think I've done really well. All right, the next book on the list this week is The Flash, number 86, written by Joshua Williamson and the art is by Rafa Sandoval. And this one right here is the grand finale of the Rogue's Reign storyline. And of course, Joshua Williamson has been killing it on this book. If you haven't been reading The Flash, you should be. He's just really well written. I love the way he writes Barry Allen. I love the way he's built out the Speedster's world. And this storyline, the Rogue's Reign, has been a lot of fun. The big showdown happens inside of this book, folks, where Captain Cold, he's basically, because of an upgrade that Lex Luthor has given him, he's got this mega level power, and so he goes up against the Flash, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, if there's ever a time when you'd want to see Captain Cold and what he could be, this is it, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, it comes back down to the end that he's just a thief. He's not one of these mega level, type of villains, and it kind of ends with that, and that's how he's kind of defeated. Flash kind of unthaws his family, and they kind of help bring him down, saying, "Hey, you're not this big mega level villain." But the seed's been planted. He did amazingly well. It was a lot of fun to read the dichotomy of the villain basically taking over the whole city, freezing it, and coming up to a level that was diabolical. I just really enjoyed it. Definitely give this one 2 sticks up. I'm not going to reveal the last page because definitely going forward, we kind of see where Williamson is going to take the character. So you want to read it to find out what that big reveal is. But this is a lot of fun. And Rogue's Reign, this is the end of that storyline. So this is a good time to hop on this book. If you haven't been reading it, next issue, number 87, would be the beginning of a brand new storyline. So that's a good time to hop in the book if you haven't been reading it. I give this one 2 sticks up. And next one we have The Batman's Grave, number 4. This one written by Warren Ellis. Love Warren Ellis's writing. Pencils by Brian Hitch, and it's got colors by Alex Sinclair. Probably one of the more famous colorists that we have around nowadays. Most colorists you don't ever hear about because they're just digital jockeys, but there's some that make their mark and are a little bit more than that. Alex Sinclair has definitely made his mark on the comic world with his colors, and so the first 3 issues were mostly action, and inside of this issue, number 4, it's no different. It's probably more action inside of this one than in the last couple, and so I would say this book is probably about 3/4 action. And you know what? I didn't mind the way it's drawn, the way it's written. I had a lot of fun reading this. The fight that Batman has is absolutely brutal. Beyond the action, there's some scenes where he's talking with Alfred. There's some comedy there, and it's really well written, the back and forth between Batman and Alfred. But I got to tell you, the thing that stood out to me inside of this book was inside of these action scenes, which are good, by the way. Did I say that already, that they're good? Let me just say that they're good. They're good action scenes. Bone-crunching stuff, folks. I mean, you literally see jaws being broken and Batman going to town. Street level, just nasty, knockdown, drag-out fighting. It was awesome. But I got to tell you, most of the fighting happens inside of a dark room, and Alex Sinclair's use of the color blue to create this shaded world with which they're fighting in when it's just inside of a house is fantastic. It's really well done, and I had a lot of fun reading this one. I give this one 2 sticks up. I don't know where they're going with it. I think there's only a couple more issues left, but I feel like they're really starting to bring the story to the forefront of what's going on. There's a group that they're starting to identify that's been behind all these things, which is kind of what we predicted in the beginning. Anyway, again, 2 sticks up. Check this one out, folks. All right, and so those are my main reviews this week. I don't really have a pick of the week this week because nothing stood out to me as being like the pick all. All of them, most of the books I read were great this week, but all of them also had some minor problems, and so I wouldn't say any of them stood out as being in the forefront. All of them are good, don't get me wrong, except for one. But I can't say one stood out more than the other. How about that? There you go. Okay, so I'm going to do my mini reviews, and let's go ahead and put that away. And so the next book I read was The Undiscovered Country, number 3. This, of course, written by Charles Sewell and Scott Snyder. I like how this book is developing. I do like the artwork. I think the guy's name is Kamen Coley, is the artist. Book 2 was kind of, it felt like, filler. They were trying to build some things out, but it didn't give us too much. This builds the world out a little bit more. It kind of gets into some characters a little bit more. I think it's kind of very slow how they're developing the story, but I'm on board for it. I love the premise and the whole mystery of what the United States is in this world, what it's become. I'm really, dying to find out how it got that way and how it all works and why it is the way that it is. Really enjoying this. I give this one 2 sticks up. And the next one is Flash Forward, number 5. And been following this one. This has been a real fun read. This one is written by Scott Lobdell, and the pencils are by Brett Booth. In the comments last week, I kind of tipped even in the video, I tipped my hand that I really didn't know who Brett Booth was. And I got to tell you, I'm glad I found him. Great artwork. Like I said, I was out of comics for a while, and he wasn't a name that was big when I was into comics before. And but I dig his pencils. And Scott Lobdell's writing, this is a lot of fun. This whole story has been fun. Of course, I do believe they're leading up to another type Crisis on Infinite Earths type event. I do believe Wally West is going to be the hero of that event. But inside of this, it's kind of setting the stage for that type of thing happening. And it's been a lot of fun to read. I give this one 2 sticks up. If you haven't been reading this one, you can still get the first 4 issues pretty cheap at your LCS. Check this one out. And then the next book is one of the Black Label prestige format books, and of course, this is The Question, the deaths, plural deaths of Vic Sage. This is number 2, and of course this was written by Jeff Lemire, the great Jeff Lemire. It's drawn by Dennis Cohen. Now Dennis Cohen, has done a lot of work in the past on The Question, so it's awesome to have him doing this book. And then the inks are done by Bill Sienkiewicz. How can you go wrong with a team like that? And you can't. I mean, this is an awesome book. I'm really enjoying where it's going. Basically, the character is basically dying in different timelines, and he's trying to figure out why. The first one was kind of a New York setting. This one's set in the Old West, as you can see by the picture. Really well written. It's a little more in depth. I love these prestige format books, but I really dig where they're going with this. This would be my pick of the week, except for the fact that it was really slow and it didn't really grab a hold of me, but I really enjoyed the writing, and it was in a certain sense, even though it didn't wow me, it was still masterful, and you can't go wrong with this book. So check this one out. If you didn't get the first one is a piece of art. I would say this is a good compliment to it. 2 sticks up. And then next we got Dead Eyes, number 4, by Image Comics. Of course, this one is written by Jerry Duggan, art by John McCrae, and this is just a fun read, guys. If you haven't been reading Dead Eyes, check it out. It's a little more adult, so this is not one that you're going to want to give your kids. And it is brutal. I mean, there's a fight inside of here with a skill saw. Yes, he uses a skill saw in a fight. I've never seen that before in a comic book. That was a lot of fun. And what the character does inside of here is pretty cool. And I'm having fun reading this one. If you haven't been reading this one, you should be. Again, Dead Eyes #4, Image Comics. I give this one 2 sticks up. Really enjoyed this one, guys. And then my last book for this week comes from Dark Horse Comics, and it's called Tales from Harrow County. And this is issue #2. Now, I didn't pick up issue #1 to begin with. I actually had, I remember, hearing about the first series. I didn't pick up #1, but when I saw #2 was coming out, I figured I'll go get #1, get caught up so I can read this one. And, I don't know if it's because I didn't read the very first series, but this just did not grab a hold of me. #1, I really didn't like the artwork. It's just not my type of artwork. So that right there was very hard to get into. I loved the setting and I loved the premise. But the writing was kind of blasé. It didn't draw me in. And the horror element that's inside of it, it kind of felt like shoehorned in. And so I didn't enjoy this one. And again, like I said, maybe it's because I didn't read the original series. Maybe if I had, I'd enjoy this one a little bit more. But as a new reader coming into it, picking up #1 and then checking out #2 this week, neither the artwork nor the story grabbed me, and so unfortunately I got to give this one 2 sticks down. So there you go, folks. There's my comic books for my pull list this week. Of course, you'll notice that there is a lack of Marvel books on here, and that's because I didn't get all my books this week. I didn't get any of my X books. I didn't even get my copy of Spawn. And so I do definitely have some books that I'm missing this week. Hopefully I'll get them on Monday when I get back to the real world, or maybe even today. I don't know. When I leave here, I'm going to go lay down. I'm still not feeling 100%. But yeah, I didn't get my Marvel books this week. So you'll notice that there's definitely a lack there. There's a hole. Sorry about that, folks. We had some technical difficulties there, and for whatever reason, my video cut out, and so here I'm back. So basically what I was saying was we had, last week I put the call out for, so I was trying to look for a book, and you guys responded. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Two Gun Pedro, because he helped me to find where to get these books. And so here we go. I'm talking about Daredevil #600. I was looking for a specific cover. I ended up getting all 3 because it was more cost effective to get all 3. They're all beautiful. And here we go, Daredevil #600. And of course, this was drawn by my favorite Daredevil artist of all time, Joe Quesada. That's the first cover. Here's the second cover, a variant of it, and then of course the cover that I wanted the most, which is the Virgin cover. You have Daredevil in the black togs, and so I did end up getting those. Thank you so much, Two Gun Pedro. Couldn't have done it without you. So there's my books this week that are not on my pull list, folks. And the other thing that we like to do on this show is our question of the week. This week I'm going to answer a couple of questions, and but the first question comes from Sean McCurdy, and he asks, what is my favorite alcohol drink to sit back and read a good comic book to? And I'll just tell you, Sean, I'm a beer connoisseur. I love a good beer. I used to be a home brewer, and then I got trained to be a judge, a taster for homebrew competitions. And so I do enjoy a good beer. And I could give you a rolling list of some of my favorites. Here lately, though, I haven't been able to drink those type of beers because they're very high in calories, and so I've been kind of relegated to drink water. And what I'm talking about is Michelob Ultralight, which is the lowest carbs and lowest calories that you can get. I do not consider it beer, but it's enough beer flavor for it to be a treat for me, and so I'll have 1 or 2 of those a week. But nothing compares to having a good Guinness or a good Sierra Nevada. Those are 2 of my favorites. I love pale ales. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different beers out there that I like. I love a good Kolsch. But to read a good comic book, there's nothing like popping a cold one, sitting back in my favorite recliner, and reading my comics that I picked up that week. So there you have it. And then our question of the week comes from David E68, and his question is, who is currently my favorite DC character and why? This is a hard question to answer there, David, only because of the fact that I like so many different characters. When it comes to the DC universe, Batman was my introduction into comics, and so I have a very soft spot in my heart for Batman. I'll always buy the Batman comic book, I'll always buy Detective Comics, and so I do have a soft spot in my heart for that character, and I'll always buy those comic books. But having said that, there are a lot of other characters in the DC universe that I enjoy. Currently, I'd have to say my favorite character is the Flash. And the reason why is because he probably has one of the best rogues galleries that any character has out there. Not every comic book character has a great rogues gallery. Daredevil doesn't have a great rogues gallery. Batman has probably the most famous one, followed by Spider-Man. But the Flash has a pretty incredible rogues gallery, with Captain Cold and Reverse Flash. You have Mirror Master, the Jester, Captain Boomerang, Weather Wizard. There's, a whole plethora of great villains, and of course, my favorite all-time Flash villain, Gorilla Grodd. I'm a huge Gorilla Grodd fan, and so, because of that, I've always enjoyed reading that book. I do think a good rogues gallery helps you build out your character because they test your character in different ways. But I really love, and I'm more of a Barry Allen purist. I love Barry Allen, but I do have to say that Wally West is probably one of the greatest comic book characters ever to be created. I'm just a huge Barry Allen fan now. Some other DC characters that I really enjoy, I think Dick Grayson is probably one of the most important DC characters that there is. I'm a huge Deathstroke fan. You pretty much usually buy anything Deathstroke. I love that character. And yeah, there's just a whole bunch of different DC stuff that I like and love, and I will buy, but usually if it comes down to it, if you really boil me down to just one, I'm going to say I can't do it. Batman, Flash, those are my 2 DC characters, and the Flash right now is probably my favorite. So there's your question of the week. Thank you very much, David, for asking that. Do me a favor, folks. If you have a question for me, leave it in the comments. I do gather them. I do collect them. So later on, at some point, I can go ahead and ask it on the show, and I probably will feature it at some point. But this is a way for me to be able to interact with you guys, get to know you, you get to know me, because that's what's more important to me on this show than anything else, is getting to know you guys. And so that's it for our show. Just a reminder, folks, remember to tune in on Monday. 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when the video drops, but make sure you're looking for it that day. The new Comics and Comics show on Comics with Bueller. Remember, this week's question is, what do you consider a true first appearance? I think that's going to be a great discussion, and Bueller and I will be getting together later on tonight to actually film that. But there you have it. So do me a favor, folks, hit that like and subscribe. Really appreciate you tuning in. Remember, always support your local comic shop, and Excelsior.